So it's been a long time we've been planning this podcast for, right?
Yes.
So we're in November right now. I think April we initially tried to book something in.
Yes.
And then September, October, now in November. And what's really cool is that when we started doing podcasts, it's been a year. And the first podcast we did was just us two and afterwards. You know who's after us? Who's our first guest?
Darshan.
And she was Darshan, right? Benji came on. And we had a lot of requests after that from Sangat, invite this person on, invite that person on. And a lot of you also asked for yourself to come on as well, which is really cool.
I actually asked them to ask that.
And that's really cool. And what was really nice is that a lot of the Sangat have already watched your content as well. So a lot of the local Sangat here, the Sikhs that we know, a lot of our mates, for example, as well. And what's nice to see is that with Guru's grace, you have this impact offline with the local community, but also online as well. You do a lot of great work on social media, on your YouTube channel, your Instagram page, etc., which we'll go through later on. But one thing that I was thinking about and contemplating before the podcast was this idea of just serving and seva. And it's great to see that in your personal life with your work in the community, that everything that you do is like, it's for other people, it's for the betterment. And even you could see that online as well. So one of the first questions I want to ask you just around the idea of seva. And why is seva important to you, the idea of serving?
That's a really good question. I haven't really thought of it from a point of view of seva before in terms of extrinsically and put that label on it. Personally, I have a background as an osteopath. I was working in private clinic, working in the NHS, earning a lot of money, and it just felt a bit empty. And being able to just offer advice to people for free, being able to do talks at Gurdwara and camps and engage with the community, and being able to maintain a clinic in Southall where most of up and air, like the elderly in particular, the people who may not necessarily get the access to the best services, that's been much more fruitful than being a professional and being, so it feels more like something for myself as opposed to something for other people. I think a person can achieve a lot more when they are doing it for something outside of themselves.
Right, Guru. I like that. And just the idea of even the way I posed the question about seva, and it's nice to see a response that in one way, in your eyes, it's like you don't see it as seva. It's just something that you're doing, just something that is selfless, helping other people. Just maybe one point that comes to mind on that is something that even myself, I learned from my elders, like my grandparents, just this idea of just naturally just helping other people, right? It's like naturally ingrained in them. And one thing I was speaking to Khivi Singh about as well is like, many times today when we do ardas, when we pray to God very simply, we kind of always ask for our own, problems to be resolved. But one thing that's so interesting about like my Nani Ji, for example, because I went to visit her recently, only things that I picked up is like she would always ask for everybody else's good and bala before her own. Do you find that as well with your grandparents?
Yeah, 100%.
How about yourself? Do you see that with the elders?
I like working in London. I work with lots of different faiths and communities and groups, and that's one of the things I love about Sikhi the most is with Ardas we ask for Sarbat da Bhalla. It is very much about we don't go there so much with a laundry list of in front of Guru Granth Sahib and say, you know what, I need a new car, I need this much money for this. Usually we ask for naam, we ask for opportunity to sangat, opportunity for bhakti. And I really like that about the Sikh faith. We ask for every day in Ardas, we ask for Sarbat da Bhalla. And that's one thing that I really enjoy about our community. And going back to your original question, when I was actually studying biomedical sciences at Royal Holloway, and my mum got breast cancer. So she was having chemotherapy and radiotherapy and experiencing a lot of pain associated with the treatment. And it's obviously distressing to see a parent going through so much suffering. And I was looking at options online, looking at kind of natural stuff, looking at all these supplements and anything that could help with the cancer and along that vein. And someone mentioned osteopathy. So I took her to an osteopath and she walked out there and she felt a lot better. And prior to that, she was on painkillers. She was kind of hallucinating, hearing like even the sound of the radiator at night, the water running through the radiator was so distressing to her because of the strong meds she was on. And she walked out of the osteopathy clinic and she was like, she had a smile on her face that I hadn't seen for months. She said, I feel really good. And I thought, this is incredible. You can do something with your hands without the need for drugs or surgery that can benefit someone, make somebody feel better. So when I got into osteopathy, long story short, the idea was just, if I can help my mum, then it's worth it. So I changed my degree, studied osteopathy. I thought, if I can just do her seva, that'll be worth it. But it's given me an opportunity to meet lots of amazing people like Bhai Singh's Sheed, Bhai Singh's wife, got to do her seva at the Darbar where she lives. Got to see Bhai Jeevan Singh, lots of like Gursikhs, Bhai Molik Singh from Australia. So it's given me an opportunity like Baba Fajr Singh and stuff. So it's been a big blessing for me, I think, more so than people I've
just
treated.
On that point as well about osteopathy, for someone who's listening who has no idea what osteopathy is, can you just explain just briefly, simply what it is?
I think the simplest way to think of it would be it's a manual therapy similar to chiropractic and physiotherapy. I think some people are very proud of their professions and their titles, but essentially you're trying to work with your hands through massage, cracking, that kind of stuff to make somebody feel better.
Okay.
So it's kind of a where somebody would go before they go down the injection route or surgery route.
And do you think some of these practices you do, Baji, are like a lot more ancient from like olden style of medicine and treating people when like before we became more reliant on like drugs and prescription stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I work with the wrestlers, the Olympic guys. I was on London 2012 Olympic team, Guru Kripa in the medical team. And part of Indian culture, part of a lot of these Eastern European, Soviet, massage is a big kind of part of that. So even if you go to Dubai in India now, there'll be somebody there to get a massage from if you want. Obviously, what they do is very different to what I do. But it is traditionally very much part of our culture. When my son was born, I used to do massage on him every night. It would just help him sleep better. He'd get less colic. He'd cry less. And sometimes he'd fall asleep during the massage. So there's something very powerful about touch. And in terms of nurturing a relationship with a father and son or with a mother-daughter, mother-son, I think there's something very powerful there. So that is a bit of a lost art, I think, in our community.
And how long have you been doing this work for now?
In terms of the osteopathy, it's been 11 years that I've been practicing professionally. And then the degree was 5 years.
And just going back to the point earlier about you're talking about meeting so many great people then whilst you're doing this work, this seva of osteopathy as well. So maybe just a bit along those lines. So was you always into Sikhi then from a young age? Born to a Sikh family?
No, I wasn't. My family is typical Punjabi kind of Khan Peen wale family. There's nobody in my family who's religious. And I went to university. I was a Thai boxer then. I used to compete in interclubs and, just was in good shape and was like Mr. Popular. I thought myself as that.
I think I was
a skinhead at one point.
Oh, okay. Can't imagine that.
But yeah, I could never grow a beard. And I had very short hair, bit like military style crew cut. And then I was in university, used to be really big on dancing, go to all the student nights and stuff. The kind of the main person in our little gang of boys who were all up in it. And then I started thinking, well, going to sleep at night, and there was this Mool Mantar poster that was up on the wall. And I'd be sitting there thinking, I feel like I have everything. I have health, I have popularity, I have, outwardly, I feel like it's people probably think, yeah, this guy's got it all together. But I wasn't content. There was something missing. And so I think it all started for me at university. And then I would randomly listen to some Simran and just close my eyes and get a bit of peace from that. And then went to Boss Camp, and that was my first interaction with the Gurbani, because they had the basics of the Sikhi to the max up on the PowerPoint. So they would do Nityanem in the mornings, and I thought, wow, this is amazing. This is really deep, because from a Western educational perspective, you're learning philosophy, you're learning all these different types of things and theologies and ideologies, and then you realize actually this is what Gurbani is saying, and it's just mind blowing. And I think it was that Boss Camp, when I got back from there, that was the main start to the journey. There's a few other friends who I went with who also got into Sikhi at the same time, and I remember them coming off the coach. I really wanted to grow my kiss, and I had left early because of a family emergency, and I was praying to Vaheguru that, you know, if somebody could just do it with me, if I had someone's like, you know, Sangat, then, you know, I really want to take this step. And then I went to collect my friends from the coach station, and they all got off and they were like, oh, we're all gonna become Singhs now. We're all gonna grow our kiss. And so Zadveer, Baljit Singh, all these guys, that was the day.
Baji, did you have an experience at the camp which made you like, was the turning point for you?
I think in terms of me thinking there's something really in this, it was sitting during Nityanam and I'd read the translations, and then I thought, wow, you can actually meet God in human birth. And just the power of Gurbani, I think, was an initial really strong impetus to think, well, there's got to be more to life, and maybe I should explore this avenue and see what there is in this, because I'm fortunate enough to be born into the Sikh faith. So,
and just the idea of Sikh camps, then Sikhi camps, because you've come into Sikhi, I guess that was a big push for you. And even you talk about Boss Camp, I later will talk about Bhai Jagraj Singh Ji as well, and your interactions with them, and they came into Sikhi through Boss Camp as well. That was a big part in their Jeevani. So would you recommend Sikhi camps to people there to definitely go to?
Yeah, so I think there's two parts to that question in terms of my answer, parts of the answer. The first is Sangat's really important. And if you're going to change, it's going to be through Sangat. And if you can find and surround yourself with good people, you're set. You're kind of halfway there. It's really important to find good Sangat. And camps are a great way to do that, because people who are going to go there, hopefully they're going to be like-minded. The other part of the answer is, when I got into Sikhi and when Bhai Jagraj Singh Ji got into Sikhi, there wasn't basics. There wasn't all of these mediums that they are now. So it was a different time, and so there is a lot that people can do even if you don't have access to a camp, or if you can't go. There's lots of books online. There's lots of resources that you guys have put out. There's the videos, there's the weekly katha, if you can watch it online, live stream. So there's a lot now that's there that wasn't there. I mean, I'm talking about prior to the conception of YouTube and Facebook, when the internet, you'd have to dial up on a modem to get on the internet. And I think
and lots of laggers on it.
Yeah. And I think apart from Yahoo Messenger, there was really no reason to go on. There was no one who was going to message you. So that was a different time, and I think there are some issues around camps in terms of, I think you want to be going for the right reasons. So I think one of the things that I've seen since I was thinking about aging myself, and I was thinking I've been in Sikh for 15 years now, and I think sometimes people, they need to go with the right intentions. If you're going there to meet God and you're going there to get closer to your guru and do Sangat and do all of that, then that's really good. But I think we were talking earlier about how the internal journey is really important, and sometimes it's really easier to be religious externally, to look the part and to be going through the motions. But on the inside, you're kind of empty.
100%.
So, or you're going there for the wrong reasons, like you want to get married and you want to try and find somebody to get married to and all of that kind of stuff, which is easy for me to say because I didn't have that issue. Guru Kripa, met a very lovely person, and she's my inspiration. But
the timestamp this, I can
timestamp it and please send it. But and I know it's probably more challenging now for Rishte and stuff, because when I got married, there was no internet, so things were a bit simpler. It was just through networks. But there's that aspect of it I think people need to be careful of. There's just making sure that you're going with the right intentions. And
so, Bhai, on the topic of marriage, then what would you look for then in a partner?
Yeah, so I think it's very individual. And I think the dynamics of every relationship is very different. So my friends who are still married, Guru Kripa, they are very different to me and Darshan Kaur. And me and Darshan will be married, Guru Kripa, I think it's going to be 11 years next month. So, we've been through ups and downs, but the dynamics of the individual, we feel, and from speaking to people who've been married for a very long period of time, they kind of concur, regardless of whether they're Sikh or not, is that you need to have one person who's, can be a bit fiery. And with us, that's Darshan Kaur. And the other person needs to be a bit passive. Because if you got two very kind of hot-headed, very kind of strong-minded people, it's very difficult to make a relationship work, because one will kind of, back will go up. You said this to me, and then the other one won't back down. You need one person who's going to be like Sat Bachan, and even if they don't agree, They think, okay, bigger picture, we're a team, we need to make this work. So I'm gonna just, I'm gonna back down. And I think when you have that kind of dynamic, it's really there will be a fluctuation in terms of someone might be having a bad day, might be tired, might be stressed, and that person might be ratty on that day. But the kind of emotions are very amplified when you're in a relationship, when you're married. So you have to be in a relationship where you're going to be able to have that give and take, and the person's going to give you the benefit of the doubt, and you're going to be able to do that for them. And I don't think necessarily, it was looking at some brain science research, and men necessarily mature. They're saying men become adults more likely in their 30s as opposed to when they're 18.
Okay.
And women become adults a lot younger in terms of their frontal lobe and their reasoning and all of those types of things. So I think I wouldn't rush into marriage personally. And I would make sure you find the right person that's right for you, in terms of, I wouldn't be too concerned about looks, because you have to live with that person for the rest of your life. You have to get on with that person for the rest of your life. So I'd look at personalities and how you guys get on together. And usually when you meet somebody, if you don't know them for a long period of time, you might not get a true picture of their personality. And people can change. I'll tell you a funny story about darshan ko. So before we got married, I used to go to this Gurmukh's house to do Simran every evening. And when we met each other, and then we both said yes, and our families got involved, and I was like, oh, do you want to go to Simran in the evening? She's like, yeah, I want to go. And then as soon as we got married, she's like, I was like, oh, let's go to Baji's house for Simran. She's like, I don't want to go. I was like, what? You've been going for about 6 months? And she was like, yeah, I just went because I was just because you were going, but I don't actually want to go. But now it's the opposite. Now she tries to drag me along, and I'm like, no, I'm okay at home. And she's like, no, we have to go and stuff. So you do have that give and take in relationships. But the point of the story was that you're going to grow together, you're going to develop together. You just want to find like a compatibility where you can think, okay, for the next 30 years, 40 years, 50 years, day in, day out, I can be in a position where I'm going to be able to have this person as a friend and be able to get through the hard ups and downs, which there will be in marriage, married life. That's a long, convoluted answer. But yeah, I also, in terms from a Western perspective, I think it's important to have goals, because if you don't know what you're aiming for, you have no idea if you're going to get there, and if you have got there. So if I was going to go back and do it again, which hopefully I won't, I would look back and think, okay, well, I want the person to, my only criteria in darshan ko was, I wanted somebody who's say pyare mel jinna milya tera naam chitaave, that somebody that when I see them, it inspires me to do Simran, and she is that person. And that was my only criteria. But for some people, it might be somebody who they want somebody to live with their mum and dad. So that's going to be, if that's important to them, they need to highlight that at the outset. For some people, it might be they want somebody with a strong nitnem or certain characteristics, and somebody who's humble. And so I think it's really important to have that in your mind before you meet the person, because you can get so infatuated with someone that you can overlook these things. And then afterwards, they're very much amplified.
Anji.
So it's worth being sure.
Thank you for that. You got your answers question, Khivi Singh. So now,
on the other hand, I think now there's more choice than ever. So I have patients of mine who are mid-30s, they're not married, and they meet lots of people, and they have lots of options. And I think it's important to have some mimita as well, and think, well, I'm not perfect myself, so that person's not going to be perfect. So if we're both kind of growing and we're on the same page, that we both want to learn and develop and change to make a relationship work, then that's great.
Anji. No, definitely. And one thing that we was hoping to do in the future is have yourself and maybe Darshan Penji on together as well. So if we did it with the quiz night as well in March, right? We asked a few questions to the Sangat, because that was a quiz night based around marriage as well, around the Nand College. So then hopefully if people have more specific questions, who are married, who are looking to get married, then they can get that advice. So hopefully that's something we could do in the future as well.
Yeah. And I think the male perspective, because she did a group where she did a marriage group, I think it was for Sikhi Mind charity. And I said, there's no point doing a marriage group where you have males and females together, because the males aren't going to be open about their issues that they're having with their wives in front of their wives. So I think it's really important for men to have a platform where they can just, even if it's a friend, a neighbor, somebody from school, a brother, a cousin, someone where they can just have an open dialogue with and say, you know what, I'm really struggling with this. It might not be with marriage, it might just be the stresses and strains of daily life. But there is a big issue with kind of male mental health. And there's that bravado in our community that, you know, kuch nahi hoya, sher-e-ban and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I think it's toxic because everyone's going to have problems. And the problem, when you air it and when you talk about it, it is halved. And if you just brush it under the carpet and think, oh yeah, it'll be fine, it just tends to spiral and then, you know, things escalate.
Anji, and actually it's really good that you mentioned that point, because when I spoke to you back in May when we did that quiz night, you mentioned stuff like this like this then as well, about, you know, even just Singhs getting together and just, you know, doing Vichar, and that kind of like older brother kind of feeling, like as in you got somebody you can speak to, and even just by you saying that, it just opened my eyes to the idea that actually is good to speak to other people and therefore experience what you're going through as well.
Yeah, I think it's really important to have somebody that you can be vulnerable with. So, you know, I need to be able to call somebody and say, you know what, I'm really struggling with Darshko at the moment because, you know, we're having an argument about this or something, right? But if you don't have that and you're keeping that all bottled in, then I think it can be quite toxic. And I think women are a lot better at doing that than men are.
Anji.
They will call on a friend or call on, you know, their mom or sister. But with men, it's kind of like, you know, nothing's happened, and from the outside everything looks great,
Anji.
and then you hear, you know, that something's happened, or that, you know,
Or they keep it like bottled inside.
Yeah. And or they lead to addictive behavior. So Gabe Mate is a leading expert on addictions. He says you shouldn't say to somebody, you know, why are you addicted? You got to say, why are you in pain? Because that addiction is an anesthesia for pain that they're experiencing. And unfortunately, a lot of people like myself aren't at the point where they can get enough solace or enough peace or enough healing from Gurbani in the state of mind that they're in. So they need worldly things. They need to have a brother to just, you know, hug and cry and say, you know, I'm really struggling in my marriage right now, or you know, I'm really struggling with my baby doesn't sleep and I haven't slept in days and I have to go to work and I'm just, you know, I'm having arguments with my wife, and that kind of stuff is real things that everybody goes through, but we don't talk about. And I think that's a problem.
And I think that's a really important point that you made, VG, about the idea of even just doing part and stuff. And sometimes we feel like even by doing that, we're still struggling. And that is something that I definitely see today. A lot of people will do part and then they'll be almost confused, like, but I'm doing the right things, but how come I'm still in pain? But it's only when we speak to people that have been through that, have experienced that we get a better understanding of it as well. So do you have any Vichar on that as well? Any deeper when it comes to the idea of someone could be doing similar and they could be ticking all the right boxes, but still, you know, they're still in this state, this mental state that they're struggling with.
Yes. So Darshiko has a lot more expertise in that remit because, and she gets a lot more messages, and I read her comments and her messages, and people will say, oh, you need to do more part, and, you know, sabro ka kadnam. And I agree with that 100%. And I'm not by any means saying that somebody should reduce the nitnem or do less simran, because in my hardest points of life, that's what's got me through. So I think that is very important. But I think on top of that, it's also very important to share your issues. If you look at things from an evolutionary perspective, hunter-gatherers, for example, the communities that still exist, they work around 5 hours a day. The rest of the time is spent with their brothers, their fathers. They're very much, they're not on social media. They're not on, you know, coming back and watching TV. They're having real life conversations where they're looking people in the eye and they're telling stories and they're talking about their day, they're talking about their issues, and they're getting solace and encouragement and mentorship from the elders in their community. But I think there's a pandemic of loneliness. You can be in a house full of people and still be lonely, because everyone's, you know, attached to the screen, or they're in a different world. They're not really present. And that loneliness then can have lots of implications. So in terms of the Gurbani aspect and Simran aspect, I think that is key. Everything from a Western and Eastern perspective, everything stems from the thought. So if behavior stems from a thought, habits stem from a thought. If you have, you know, my wife said this to me, how dare she say that to me? Or, you know, they call it Shabad di Chot, right? When I was talking to Elder Gursik and I said, my wife said this to me, and he goes, that's why the Shabad is more powerful than the bullet, because a bullet will hit you and, you know, you'll in 6 months, you'll be completely back to normal. 3 months, even if they break the femur, right? If it goes through a femur, 3 months, you'll be back to normal. But shabad, someone can say something to you once, and for your whole life that can sit with you.
Yeah.
That she said this to me or he said that to me. And so with Gurmantar, we can kill our vichar, we can lessen our vichar, and we can stop that rumination where it's, he said this, she said that, I'm not going to go there because this person did this, or and all of that baggage, all of those vichar, all of those thoughts, they can get to a point where they bombard a person so much that they can put people into really dark places. But through having conversations with people, through normalizing it, like if you say to me, well, Baji, I'm struggling with my wife, I was like, let me tell you about Darshako, you know, I struggled as well, and that's completely normal. And then you think, okay, well, maybe it's not something wrong with my marriage. Maybe this is a normal part of marriage. There's seasons, there's going to be stormy seasons, there's going to be springs and summers as well. But unless you can have that conversation, both things are, I think, very necessary. And I was listening to some katha, and they're talking about I think 52 hukums of Guru Gobind Singh Ji.
Hanji.
And one was related to having knowledge of politics, and the Kathawachik was saying why would that be relevant, you know, for Sikh? And he was saying, unless you understand the workings of the world, it can be difficult for you.
Yeah.
So I think the same way in the marriage, it's important to understand the mechanics of a marriage, you know, important to understand the mechanics of father-son relationship. And, you know, the same way we appreciate when we go to school, we have to wear a uniform, we have to do these things, we have to say good morning to our teacher, right? There's certain things, worldly things that we need to appreciate. And one of them as males is that we need to have some tap to release emotions, stress, things that's building up. It might be miscommunications, all of these types of things. And it might not be with your partner that you can do that with, because they might be most often the person that you're feeling those issues with, because they're the person that's closest to you. So my mum and Darshan Kaur are the two people who could, if they wanted to, make me cry. Not that they do but they would know exactly the right things to say. So it's often the people that we are closest to, the people who love us the most, that we have the most conflict with. So it's really important to understand how to navigate those relationships. And that's why networks are so important. Sangat is so important. But also not just Sangat where we're sitting together, but Sangat that I can trust, that going to be Baji. I know if I tell him something, he's not going to go tell the Gwandi and put it on, you know, tell everybody else. And then my personal business is going to be, everyone's going to know they say in Punjabi, Nangani karna and all of that stuff. So I think it's very important to have a network of people that you can trust. If you can't access that, if you're not fortunate enough to have that in your life, then there's counseling services, there's professionals who they have to keep confidentiality rules and all of that kind of stuff. So that it's a shame for a marriage to break down, or a relationship, you know, father-son relationship, or any relationship to break down because people didn't access help that was available. And it's also important to go to the right people, because I know as a pracharak, you're probably getting thousands of people telling you their problems. But, you know, Darshan Kaur is a clinical psychologist. She has systems in place. So she has counseling herself to help her deal with all of the things that she's heard. So there's systems in place for people who are struggling, and also for those people. So there's certain things that if someone says to her, like if someone says, oh, you know, I feel like taking my life, she has to take that very seriously, and she has to alert the services that will be able to be there for that person, like a crisis hotline. So those types of things are really important. So you seek help from those around you, your loved ones, and from the people that I've interviewed, who have gone through depression, who have gone through really dark times. It's been the random auntie in the Gurdwara who, you know, gave them a hug and just cried with them, or it's been that big brother who was there for them when they needed them. It's been those relationships that have been the most important in that person's life, as opposed to anything else. And then that person can grow their relationship with Gurbani and Simran. But let's say if I want to do Simran, right, Gurbani says vichar mare tare tare ultun na ave. If I want to sit down and kill my thoughts and do meditation, and I've just had an argument with my wife, like, logically, is that possible? I'm going to be thinking, what did she just say to me? What, you know, how did she done this? And last year she did this, and once upon a time she said this to me, and that's all going to be playing in my head. But if we're sitting together and we do some kirtan together and we're doing vichar together, I'm present, my mind is there. And that's what I really need at that point in time. That presence, not just sitting there, my mouth is reading Gurbani, my mouth is doing Simran, but my mind is still arguing with my wife. So, you know, Shabad in Gurbani ditthe mukt na hove jiche shabad na kare vichar, and har har kare, like the whole world is doing Vaheguru Simran, but main na sake toye. So like you have to be, presence of mind is really important with anything you do. If you went to school and you were thinking about something else and your teacher said to you, "Oh, what did I just say?" You have no idea. So I think it's both things are really important.
I think what you've done, everything you just spoken about, is really amazing, and it's really normalizing it. Just when you're talking about, because I'm sure a lot of people, even myself, a few years ago, like we were just foreign to this, but now having all these conversations, like even with Benji and yourself, it just normalizes. And a lot of times, I'm sure a lot of people listening to this as well, including ourselves, kind of relate to these things, but we never actually thought about it. It's almost like we've been asleep to it, and not realize that actually we do have emotions and we should speak about it. Even the idea of the mind, and that our mind, like you're saying, that when we have a fight or dispute, whether it's with our siblings or in your case, if it's your partner as well, then it doesn't sit still. And it reminds me of a really cool Sakhi that I heard in a Gatha, and it was about Guru Gobind Singh Ji Maharaj, and a Sikh came to them, and they were saying that my mind doesn't sit still. And the Guru Sahib was saying that's great. Right? And they're saying, "Nay Maharaj, they go, my mind is not sitting still." And Maharaj, that's great. You're so blessed, right? And they go, "But why are you saying this to me for that? I'm telling you, I can't focus." And the Guru Sahib just say to him, "You're so blessed because you realize now that you can't focus, that your mind doesn't sit still." Because a lot of us, for many years, what you're speaking about earlier is about like the external Sikhi, and we do it for many years and we go through the motions. But for many, many years, we may be doing our part, but never be present, but we just tick the box. And then now we realize actually I wasn't paying attention. My mind wasn't joining to the Shabad. So I think first thing is that it's great to see that you're normalizing this so much. And now we realize that actually we should pay more attention to our mind. If we're going through something, then we should definitely try and reach out and speak to other people about it as well. And just another point that I want to talk about was the idea of Sangat then as well, and just the importance of Sangat. If you could just touch upon that a bit more, if you don't mind.
Anji. So to go back to your last point, I did a podcast with Gurpreet Singh, the Sikh dad.
Anji.
And he was talking, me and Darshan were on there and we were talking about our issues. They had a Sikh parent, they have a Sikh parenting group. And he said in all of his years in Sikhi, he's never had a couple in Sikhi say that they have any issues. And I think that is a downfall in our community where we can't be open enough to say, actually, it's normal. You know, what you're going through is normal. Every marriage has problems. And, you know, these are things that might help, or it might just need time. You know, time is a great healer. So I think that's something that Seva, that, you know, Basics is really doing a great Seva with these podcasts, because they're bringing real life people and their experiences and a window into their lives. And I think that's really important, because as the external people that we might look up to, they have problems in their marriage as well. You know, the Panch Pyare, I'm sure they have problems in their marriage, right? And with their kids. It's really important that we kind of normalize this stuff. Otherwise we think, oh, there's something wrong with me, or there's something, it's only in my family that I have problems. Everybody else is sukhi. But we read Gurbani, it says, you know, Uche charke dekhya ta kar kare ha ag, like every house is on fire. So I think Sangat's important. Firstly, you said earlier before we went on air, Satsangat kaisi janiye jithe eko naam vakhaniye, nit jayat satsangati jithe har ka har naam baloiye. Like, you have to find Sangat that does Simran. You have to find Sangat that has a thirst for meeting God. If they're just there because, you know, their mom makes them go Gurdwara every Sunday, that's good too. But really, you're going to be a reflection of the people that you spend time with. So if you can choose to surround yourself with the best possible people, then that's gonna really help you in life. And in Bandagi Nama, Bhai Jagraj Singh Bir's book, he says sometimes it's beneficial to do Sangat of books, because you have these Gursikhs who have been through it, they've met God, and they're telling you, these are the issues we had, these are how we overcame them. And it's going to be very difficult for you and I to walk down the street and meet somebody like that. And there's a wealth of literature and there's a wealth of content with Basics that Gursikhs have taken time. Like, you've done 5 years of hard work doing Khoj of Gurbani to present that to Sangat. So I think it's it's very important to utilize those things as well as in-person people as well, because there may be some people who don't have access to Gurukar local to them. They may not have access to Singhs around them. I know other parts of the UK aren't as blessed as we are. In London, Birmingham, Scotland, we're kind of key hubs. But in terms of what I would look for in Sangat is just that, you know, when I would talk to elder Singhs, they would say, if you go to a place and people are doing Nindya, people are talking about other people, then just leave that place. You know, if you go somewhere and they're doing Gurbani Vichar, they're reading Gurbani, or they're doing Simran, just sit in that place and just absorb it, and then just leave. You don't need to get involved in politics of, you know, he said, she said, all of that kind of stuff. Life is short. You want to get the most from it. And, you know, my friends that I did Thai boxing with, we have a relationship, we have an understanding that we train together, and that's why we have this strong bond. And I feel like with Sangat, if you have an understanding that when you and I are going to get together, we're going to do Simran together, you know, that's a beautiful relationship to have. You're not going to be like, oh yeah, he's just using me for Simran. You're going to be like, actually, this is helping me, you know, and we can grow together. So if you can find even one person like that, you know, you're very, very blessed. And I used to pray for that. And you know, Guru Kirpa, I found it, and I found Darshan Kaur. And there's by Rama Singh's book, he talks about it in there. He said he used to pray that he wishes he could find a Gursikh family that he could go and do Amrit Vela with. And you know, Darshan Kaur says when the student is ready, the teacher will appear, right? So if we really have that book and that bias, that we really want to meet somebody who's, you know, really thirsty, really hungry to meet God, and has that Sharda and that book, then, you know, God will, I'm confident God will bring that person into our life. And Bhai Gobind Singh Bir in his book Bandagi Nama, he says if you said to a kid in India, what's 2 times 2, he would say 4. And if you said to him, why isn't it 5? And he actually said, he went up to kids and said this, and they go, are you silly? Like, have you lost your marbles? Like, why would 2? And he goes, yeah, but how do you know it's 4? How do you know it's not 5? And he said, because my teacher told me, right? And he goes, that kid has so much faith that my teacher told me this, that this is true. But he goes, like, that's the kind of faith we need to have in our Guru. That Guru says you can meet God. Guru says that you can find true Sangat. That if Guru says Pei Prapat Manuk Dhiriya Gobind Milan Ki Teri Badiya, like if Guru says it is possible, then we need to have that Sharda that if this is what it says in Gurbani, then it's 100% achievable and it's 100% true, and we can find Sangat like this.
I like these little gems that you're chucking in, VG. I love them so much. They're just sticking inside me. And that's another question then about the idea of faith. How important is faith? And for somebody who is struggling to have faith, where does that come from? Sangat then? Is that from eternal? Do we do ardas for that? What would you say on that, G?
I think all of those things. And you guys have more faith than I do, so you guys know more about that. But in terms of like Sharda, there's been Gursikhs who they've met another Gursikh and they've started crying. And I look at them and think, I wish I had that much love, you know? Like, where is that person? Oh, they would hear a Shabad and they would just be in tears just because it has so much jot on them. And I'm sitting there thinking about mortgage payments or something, right? And I'm thinking, you know, why can't my mind be that nirmal as this person's? And I think if you can have those kind of people in your life, you're very blessed, and they will rub off on you.
Anji. And just a point from earlier when you spoke about even if somebody just went to the Godala side when they met Auntie G there and they just hugged them and that just helped them so much. It just reminded me of one of probably my most used shabas that I do in Qatar. It's about Mata Khivi Ji. When they speak about Mata Khivi Ji in Gurbani, they say Balwand Khivi Nek Jan Jisa Bahoti Cha Patarali. So it's one of the poets, and they're writing about Guru Angad Dev Ji's wife, Mata Khivi Ji. They say that she's a very virtuous person, just a bahoti chao patarali, like a tree that has a lot of leaves on it, meaning that when we sit under a very leafy tree in the summer, it gives us shade, it cools us down. And they're saying that's just like Mata Khivi Ji, that people would go to Mata Khivi Ji and they would get that shanti, they would get that peace. So again, it kind of fits in with the idea of that, you know, people did their Gurbani job, but they also did vichar, and they would share their feelings with the people around them. And they knew there's someone like Mata Khivi Ji that I can go and speak to. And by speaking to her, she's going to calm me down, and she's going to take away that anger that I might be burning with on the inside, or the lust, or whatever the emotion is they're going through at that time. So I thought I'd just chuck that in there as well. Because
I think that's a really beautiful story. And I think that's 100% true. You could be going through some really internal, on fires on the inside, and then you could meet somebody like see a Guru Sikh, and it just cools your mind and just cools you from the inside.
I think it's really sad also that nowadays in the Western society, maybe more, that we're pushed for more like individualism. We're pushed like, oh, you have to do everything yourself, and like it's you against the world. But in reality, we had that support network back in the day, in the bins and stuff. Everyone would help out each other, It'd be like a big family. So that's what I feel like. All these rates of like depression, anxiety, all these things, they started increasing because we've lost that, I feel.
I agree 100%. And I think we have, hundreds of, I can't remember the quote, but hundreds of friends on Facebook, but like none in real life, right?
Yeah.
So if you think about, I've read one study and it said the average couple spend something like 14 minutes a day together.
Wow.
And in terms of actually having a conversation, you think you're married to somebody, that's your sanjogi, that's the closest sanjog you've had in previous janam to be giving that birth together. And we get such little time together. But there is this modern issue of social media, and we present ourselves to be a certain way on the outside, but actually inside we're dukhi, inside we're unhappy, inside we're not content. And if we had those relationships, if we had that, and in those days the community was a lot smaller. How many people did you know, people inside your pind? I've met people in India who've never been outside their pind in their lives. So that their whole life is that community.
Anji.
And so the cohesiveness, there's Darshan told me not to talk too much. She said don't talk too much, but she also said
please talk a lot.
She also said don't try and sound clever, because the more you do that, the less clever you sound. So, but there's a book called The Village Effect, and they looked at this Italian community, and in Italy they didn't have heart disease, they didn't have cancer, they didn't have the common diseases that everyone gets. So they thought, let's study them and let's see what they do. And then when they migrated to New York, it's called Rosetta, the place that they moved to. They started getting the same diseases. So I thought, okay, what are they doing differently? And what they found was they would, like, the whole community, the whole pind would get together every Sunday, and after church, they would go to church together, and then they'd have langar together. They'd have a communal meal together. They had 3-4 generations in one household. So all of these very protective things have been lost in Western culture. And we're getting more and more away from those historic values that we've held. And as a result, it's causing issues like isolation. And there's studies on breast cancer, and survival rates jump massively when someone just has a friend compared to someone who says they don't have someone they consider a close friend. And that's got nothing to do with smoking, diet, exercise. That's simply from just having someone that you can have a heart to heart with.
And just the point you raised earlier, Vij, as well, about this idea of a pandemic or like loneliness, which is a big issue in today's world, especially with social media, that you could be online to have so many friends, but really you're lonely. But especially in today's world right now, especially with the pandemic and COVID going on as well, of course, you've heard that, levels of mental health have just spiked to another level. So what is your vichar on that? Do you think, because I think today a lot of people are struggling. I hear it all the time now. So people say because of COVID, XY person has gone crazy, right? So, but I think a lot of people, if they just realize that it's difficult times, then maybe they'd feel a bit like it's normalized. So do you have any vichar on that as well, VG, for especially those that are listening as well, that we're going through something, and they may be even more lonely now because they're already lonely in the first place because of the way we're programmed now in the Western world, but now even more lonely because we're limited to what we can actually do as well.
Yes. So firstly, I'd say that I've been through it. When COVID hit, I was just stuck at home, and I'm not used to being at home. And as much as I love my kids and my wife, it was not being able to leave the house, not being able to go to a coffee shop, not being able to have interaction with adults outside of my wife. It was a very challenging time. I was doing things like binging on Netflix and just not feeling great. But I completely understand in the small amount of experience that I have had with that type of thing. I would say find Sangat in books, find Sangat in even one person that you can sit down and do the other side with, or it's really that human interaction is really important. So I think World Health Organization is now, in some countries at least, banned solitary confinement, even in prisons, because they see it as a type of torture. So, and that's what essentially we were doing for the last 18 months was
Mm.
confining people, especially the elderly, to not being able to go Gurdwara anymore.
Yeah.
All of their types of human interaction, taking that away from them,
Mm.
and that's very, very dangerous.
100%.
And
So just to jump in, even with my grandparents, with Nani and Nana ji, because they would go Gurdwara Sahib every single day, and due to COVID, they couldn't go, and their health deteriorated to a whole new level. Even like signs of dementia started coming with my Nani ji just because of those 18 months. I'm sure a lot of people seen the same thing with their parents and their grandparents as well.
absolutely, and there's studies on couples when the wife passes away.
Mm.
There's a correlation between the husband passing away very
Anji.
soon afterwards.
Mm.
Because of that husbands aren't as good as having networks of friends, and there's data on that as well. After your 30s, men are less able to make new friends and maintain those relationships and connections, which require time and investment. So yeah, find somebody that you can have something in common with. Doesn't need to be Sikhi related. I would say if you can find someone you can go for a run with, someone you can walk the dog with, or all of those types of things. But the main thing is that it's you're not on your own. This would happen to anybody who was isolated for a long period of time, and you want to create systems, small tiny habits that are achievable and maintainable, that you can maintain and you can do every day. So it might be, instead of thinking, I'm going to go for a run every day because I feel better, that clears my head and makes me feel better, it releases endorphins, balances neurochemicals in terms of depression and stuff. It can help with all of those types of things. Just say you're going to run up to the end of the street, or do a darshan and say, okay, do 30 seconds of skipping. So it's very important not to set yourself up for failure. Just start with very easy things to do that you can do, because when you're feeling down and isolated, it's very difficult to do, kind of find the energy to go and run a marathon, that type of stuff. So running, exercise, any form of that, anything positive in your life, like having a smoothie, like working on your diet, getting a pet. So dogs are good for mental health. Going to any kind of community center or any kind of group, whether that's like a online chess club, some kind of ways that you can connect with people and get out of your own head is really important. Books, any kind of way, basics, content online.
I keep plugging basics.
It's true. I mean, that before, when I got into Sikhi, what was there? If you wanted, I didn't understand Punjabi. I still don't have a great understanding of it. But what were you going to do if you wanted to learn more about Sikhi? There was nothing.
Anji.
And Baji, just on the topic of fitness now, because I used to watch all your vlogs and videos, and you had a whole debate as well with someone as well, right? About was it a six pack or something?
I can't remember.
It was.
I have a lot of debates.
You make a lot of fitness style content as well, right? For the past couple of years. So what inspired you to go into more put yourself out there as that kind of influencer, if you can say?
Yeah, I think before I got into Sikhi, before I knew anything about Sikhi, I was into fitness. So I used to Thai box, I used to compete. I went to Thailand to train. So I think at 15, I thought, I don't want to get bullied. I watched Karate Kid and Rocky, and that was it. I got a pump and thought, that's it. I'm going to start learning some kind of martial arts. So I started with kickboxing, and then at 16, changed to Muay Thai, and then did that up until my mum got ill with cancer, stopped training. And then after I got into Sikhi, I actually stopped training completely, started having a lot of prasad, got a tummy, and would go, the whole day without eating, and then just have langar in the evening. So my diet wasn't great. And then afterwards, after my brother passed away, I started to think, okay, well, I want to be around for my kids and do. I understand that everything, your swas are written for you, sab divis saas ne vadan katan tilsar, but it's important to do your own endeavor, to do your own effort. So I started running and getting back into training, and now I do Thai boxing, wrestling, do all those types of things, and I try and promote in the community, because I think it's a shame when, if we're meant to be saint soldiers, and if something happened on the street and we weren't able to do anything, then it's a shame. How can we help somebody else if we can't help ourselves? So I think if you look at the military, they have a basic standard. You need to run a mile in X amount of time. You need to be able to do X amount of press ups in a minute, X amount of pull ups. I think we should have some kind of standard as Singhs. Okay, you know what? You should be able to at least run to the bus stop, or Or, like help your mum out with the 10 kilo atte da bora.
Yeah.
The basic things that I think.
25 right here.
Yeah, 25.
So today.
But it's heartbreaking when I see a young Singh who can't sit because his back's so bad, or his chonkra, like he can't sit in chonkra because his knees are so bad. And you think, like historically, people would say, bura ho gaya hun bhakti karan bat, sit 8-10 hours a day, do bhakti and stuff. You think like, we're going to mess our bodies up so much that by the time we get to 40, we're not going to be able to do anything.
Yeah.
So it's really important to, look after har mandir hai, sareer hai. It's really important to look after this temple of God and just put in a little bit of time and investment. Because otherwise, when problems develop, it's very hard to reverse them. If you get diabetes type 2, it's very hard to reverse that. Blood pressure, all things that we're very prone to once it's happened. So if we can take little tiny steps each day, little behavior changes, little habit changes to try and make sure that we're in good health till we're old, then I think that's
it's like our grandparents' generation. They were like so physical. They used to like walk everywhere, walk miles to like grab whatever atta or water pitchers. We live in a lot of comfort now. We just drive everywhere, even down the road, 2 minutes.
That's him.
I'll drive. I won't even walk.
He lives right next to the Gurdwara and he still drives it.
Yeah.
I was thinking on the way here, when I used to go and see Bhai Jagraj Singh in hospital, I used to cycle to the hospital. That's 12.5 miles.
Wow.
One way. And I could have driven, but I thought I'd get some exercise at the same time. So, and actually during rush hour, sometimes things take the same amount of time cycling as they would, especially with parking and all the other considerations. So if you can fit things into your lifestyle, like if you're going to go Gurukara, it's not too far and you can cycle there, then if it takes 5 minutes extra parking your bike up or locking it up, at least you're getting your heart working. There's research on brain development and memory and cognition, and students who exercise for 30 minutes before starting school, they perform a lot better in the exams. So there's benefits all around. It helps professionally, not just in terms of being able to sit and preventing diabetes, that type of stuff.
So you touched upon Bhai Jagraj Singh Ji as well and your time you spent with them. Did you want to speak more about that? Because I know when we spoke initially, that was something you're quite passionate about as well, speaking about Bhai Sahib Ji.
Hanji. So when I didn't know Bhai Sahib that well up until they got ill. I had seen their content on TV, on the Sikh channels and on YouTube. And so I was an admirer, but I didn't have the opportunity, and I'm quite a shy, introverted person outside of social media. So I'm not necessarily the person to go up to somebody and start talking to them. And then when he got ill, one of the other Singhs, Harjit Singh from SWAT, he said, there's this thing he does. He's an osteopath. He can potentially help if he's involved. So I used to go into hospital to do treatments. The first time I met him, I was obviously very intimidated. There's a Gurmukh person that I'm going to meet. And I walked in there and he just gave me the biggest smile, somebody I've never met before. And he called me towards him. He gave me a hug and stuff. And it was just, I felt so much love from somebody that I didn't even know. And he put me completely at ease. And there's a story I shared on Instagram about a time when I was doing Malish. I got to do Malish Seva of him. And he would be in and out of sleep during this time. And it was probably about 1 o'clock in the morning. And he woke up and he said, should we do some Simran Singh? And I said, yeah. And then we did some Simran. And then we were both in tears. It was a very unique and very powerful experience. And so I feel blessed to have had that opportunity. Thanks to him. But the story I wanted to share was actually the last time I saw him was around two days before he passed away. And he came over to the house and we did treatment. And then he was writing a prologue for a book at that period of time. And he said to me, if you ever need anything from me. And this is somebody who's, he's 2 days away from passing away. He was very, very ill at that period of time. And I was thinking, even at that point in time, he's thinking about how can he help me? How can he do seva in some way? And so that really touched me because I thought, even in when he's struggling with his health and all of these challenges that he must be experiencing internally and externally, not being able to do what he wants to be able to do, he's still thinking about the other person. How can he help this other person, and how can he benefit them, and how can he do seva in some way? And I gave him a hug, I gave him a kiss on his forehead, and I said, I'll see you soon. And that was the last time I ever saw him.
Like,
I found out a couple of days later that he had passed. But it's just remarkable, you know. I've been there when a few people have passed away, family members, but nothing like that. Never experienced.
And even when they did pass away, it was quite beautiful in the respect that when the family was around the house, there was so much joy and happiness because of all the Gurbani that was being played. So I remember this one Gurdasik came to the house and he was walking to the house very seriously, like, you know, everyone's going to be upset and stuff. But everyone was in Chardi Kala because when Bhai Sabji did leave their physical body, then just literally Gurbani job was happening for 10 days straight at the house of Sahaj Path Sahib, reading of Guru Granth Sahib Ji, Kirtan in the morning, Gatha in the morning, Gatha in the evening. So many great souls coming to the house. And one thing that I thought to myself at that time was that, you know, there's such a great Guru Sikh that even though they left their body physically, they're still blessing everyone with their seva and with seva in general, right? So definitely very Chardi Kala. I was very blessed as well to spend time with them before they passed as well. And everything that you say, I can just echo it as well. This very Chardi Kala and high spirits the whole time. And it kind of goes back to the start of the podcast because you talked about meeting many great people on your journey as well, through the work of being an osteopath as well. But we never actually got to finish off your kind of journey to Sikhi. We stopped at like university and then we went in this different direction. So do you mind continuing just letting us know what happened after university? Because I can relate a lot because I came into Sikhi in university as well, which is strange for people to think about because you'd think at university, most people, they get kind of caught up in that uni life and they go in that direction. But at the same time, like yourself and myself and other people, they actually can end up going in a different direction.
even Bhai
Towards
Jagraj
Sikhi.
Singh, right?
Yeah, Bhai Jagraj Singh Ji was, it was around uni time. Yeah, they were in their early 20s when they came into Sikhi as well and during the uni time as well. So would you like to continue on the life
Yes.
of Bhai Harbir Singh?
So I was talking to Darshak about this, and I said, how many things can I mention that won't incriminate me and that I can't get prosecuted for? And she was like, do you really need to go down that road? But I was probably a typical Punjabi guy, and you know, getting into fights. I didn't drink because of Thai boxing, thankfully, but used to go out and clubbing a lot and normal typical guy stuff. And then there were a few misses now that I think there's one actual story that I'll tell, which was when we were going to a fight and my cousin was in the car with me. And
A professional fighter, just like
no, it
Oh.
was somebody had got bottled at our
Okay.
university, and so I got a phone call and I was training with my cousin, and me and him are like brothers. So we were driving. We got in the car. It's probably about 1 o'clock at night. We were driving to the place, Royal Holloway, and there were two cars. One of my friends, he joined us. Coincidentally, he was coming back at the same time from an event that he went to, and then we ran red lights, and a car smashed into my car because it was a cross junction, and my cousin, it hit the front of the car. So if it was a split second difference, it would have hit him. You know, he wouldn't be here today, and I would have had to live for the rest of my life knowing that I was responsible for that. And so lots of near misses like that I've had, and I just look back now and think, if you know something had gone a little bit different here, or I would be in a completely different place. So I thank Maharaj for getting me to where I am today. I have a beautiful family, beautiful wife, and none of that would have happened if I had continued down the road I was going down. If I hadn't got into Sikhi. And since I've got into Sikhi, you know, all of that stopped. Haven't got in trouble for anything apart from at home from Darshan Kaur.
No skipping red lights anymore.
No skipping the lights. I'm the slowest driver. I was taking this family to the Gurdwara once, and the little kid in the back goes, Mom, can we give that uncle some money? And she goes, why? He goes, because he's driving so slow, I think he's running out of petrol. So that's how conservatively I drive at the moment. But so that was kind of normal, kind of typical Punjabi hooligan type lifestyle I had. And then when I got into Sikhi, it was just trying to, I thought, if it's possible to meet God, I want to try. So then it was trying to put in a lot of time to doing that. So there were periods where it was really good just sitting for long periods of time. And they got to have Sangat with lots of people. The plan was to finish university, go to India for a year and try and stay in a Gurdwara there and try and do Simran there in India. And I went to a few different places, found one place that I really was getting a lot from. So stayed there, but I had already met Darshan Kaur and she was saying, you can't go for a year, you can go for a little bit of time. So I went for a little bit of time. And then when we got married, then we both went together to India. We went to do Bias there. And that was amazing because you're going from doing, like 12 hours a day when you're in India in Sangat of like 10,000 people. And there's no way that's not going to have an impact on somebody's life. And the Singhs there were saying, if you start off your marriage like that, then it's going to help you later on in life as a couple. And they gave the analogy of a scooter because those are very popular in India. And they said, if the alignment isn't good on the wheels, then you have a very bumpy ride. And they said, marriage is the same. If you can do Simran together, your alignment will be the same, your vichar will be the same. And so the marriage journey will be a lot smoother for you. So that was a really, even though we actually stayed separately at the camps, the Simran camps, and Bibiyan don't get to interact with men, so we didn't actually get to speak to each other. That was actually a really beautiful start to, and Darshan Kaur accredits that to a lot of things. So that was probably the biggest transition point, because then I thought, actually, this isn't just theoretical. Firstly, I thought none of the things that Gurbani say in terms of, Saj and all of these things, all of these experiences and character changing was a big thing for me, because I saw a Singh who had gone to India to do Simran, and he came back and he was different. And he was a much nicer person. He was humbler, and I thought, I want to be like that. I want to change. I thought, wow, change is possible through Gurbani and Simran. So when I went there, I thought, well, none of this is going to happen to me because I've done so many bad things in my life already. But if I can just get a chance to do Sangat and Seva of these people, then hopefully it'll rub off on me. And got to have lots of experiences there in India, which have really helped me and Darshan Kaur later on in life, because now, Guru Kirpa, we have a relatively strong faith because we have our own experiences. So we think, okay, well, nobody can kind of tell us this or that because we've had our own personal relationship with Guru.
And you mentioned a lot about this stuff happening in India, just as one example. And something that I kind of realized myself, I don't know if you feel the same, that when you go to India, it's sometimes a bit easier to do bhakti and connect. I find it with any Asian country. Generally, I don't know if it's just, obviously maybe we're not exposed as much because we're not on our phones as much and stuff like that. But just the land itself, that's where our gurus were, right? Physically,
I think there's something so beautiful about driving past somewhere and thinking, Guru Nanak's Charam on this land, there's Shorty Sahibzade were Shaheed at this place. There's something really powerful. You're driving, even if you've got your eyes closed, you're driving along, you open your eyes, you see in Punjab in particular, you see Nishan Sahibs everywhere.
Yeah.
It's like constant reminders. And I think what as you said, being disconnected from work, university, all of those types of things, you're only there for one purpose.
Yeah.
And I think that's very powerful.
And Gursik was telling me about a yatra that they do, the Soha Road in Nishkam Jatha. And he said that when they do a yatra, as soon as you step foot outside your house, the yatra starts there. So you start your Simran Bhakti there, and you're not allowed to do any other like useless galla. And even from there onto the plane, onto the whole trip, and even on the way home, until you get back into your house, you're doing Simran, you're doing like Part. And that kind of environment, those experiences are what really builds your character, right?
100%. I think if you can have, there's no way you're not going to have a good journey. If you're doing Gurbani Vichar, doing, Khoja Gurbani, reading Gurbani, doing Simran, listening to Kirtan, listening to Katha, how can it not be just the most amazing time? And actually, we've traveled around the world. And when I say to Darshan Kaur, and she says the same thing to me, where's your favorite place in the world? It's actually in the Gurdwara, in Sangat doing Simran. Like that's our favorite place,
right.
Not Cyprus, not Maldives, Mauritius, all these places. So it's incredible. It's incredible. And what is there? Because in India, when we used to go, it was frigid, it was freezing. you're wearing like 16 layers, you're sleeping in your jacket because it's so cold. She would have bruises on her body because you're sleeping on the floor, and she's bruises easily. And so it's a very harsh, you got frogs around, snakes, right? So, and you got sukki roti like twice a day. And, it's Guru's langar, it's beautiful, but it's very different to Western life where you have so many comforts. But that was the most happiest, the nicest time we've ever had was there when we were like Baji was saying, where we were surrounded by, there was no faltu gallan, there was no you're talking about other stuff. It was just Gurbani and Simran and Kirtan and Katha.
I think that's something I think we would all recommend to everyone is that, especially when we're younger, when we go to India, it was like we had to go to the Pind and just stay in the Pind, and you didn't really enjoy India. But when I got to go on my own when I was older, I'll just go and do yatra. I'll go to different asthans, and then you can experience these things. What is so beautiful about India is our itihas, our history, our gurus, and you can go and you can meditate, you can do these things as well, right? And then because people in my family always joke about like, why do I want to go to India? For India is not a holiday. But even yesterday, actually, my cousins were over. She's saying as well that I'm not going to go to India. That's not a holiday. But in my head, it's like, that's where you got to go. You go to India, right? That's the place to be.
And even like the diet there is because it's so simple and or like organic food, right? That on its own makes such a big difference.
Anji. When I spent a year in India, or probably longer than that, when I was a kid, because my parents had just emigrated. My dad had been here since he was a kid, but my mum came over when she got married to my dad, and they had kids, so we stayed with my nana and nani in India. And I don't remember anyone being overweight in those days. This is going back probably early 90s or actually late 80s. There was no obesity. What were you going to have? Roti and dal. How are you going to get obese on just roti and dal? Plus you're doing kheti bari. You're doing hard physical labor. There's no TV. Where you're not even going to sit. You're going to be playing outside all day, playing marbles, playing with the other kids in the Pind. It was a very nice life.
Anji.
I really thoroughly enjoyed my time in India. And going back to what you were saying, I had some genetic testing done, and according to the genetic test, they can place you in terms of geography. So for thousands of years, my lineage has been in Punjab. So there's a very strong connection. And I think it's important for us to have some connection with where we come from. It's Guru's Dharti is also where generations of our ancestors have lived and grown up. And
bit of a random question for you then is that, like, for example, me and Khivi Singh, we do suffer with eczema sometimes as well, bad skin. And one of his theories, it's actually a good one, is that, and it happens actually when we go back to India, our skin just naturally gets better. Do you have any like idea why that is the case? Is it just because that's what our body's used to, or?
Yeah, that's an interesting one, and I've heard of that from lots of different patients. Even going to Canada for some reason, they feel better in Canada. And certain conditions. I think it could be multiple factors, but eczema is one of those conditions. It's so multifaceted. Like stress can be a component, diet can be a component, water quality can be a component, pollution. So all of these things play into it.
So that was my random question. Checking because I got very excited there. You got anything, otherwise I'll carry on. I've got another juicy question. It kind of links to everything we just been talking about now as well, and the simplicity of the 1990s, for example, and it kind of links to, which we weren't going to talk about, but I thought we were going to talk about, so we're going to talk about it, which is SEO and this whole social media hype, because again, that is having a big effect on a lot of people today. And I know that last podcast you did with Gurpreet Kaur, even the title was quite of a clickbaity one as well, about never use social media, right?
Yeah.
But
by the way, Baji's podcasts are really, really good. You have to check them out.
Check them out, definitely. We'll put a link in the description on YouTube. You can put like in the screen as well, so that you got your shout as well.
Thank you.
He didn't tell us.
I know. I was just a bad joke. I've got bad jokes. He's learned now. Already got bad jokes. But anyway, but the idea of SEO, what does SEO stand for again?
Search engine optimization.
And all these kind of different things and how it's affecting us today. Because the reason I want to talk about this as well is because us now doing parchad, we have to be very conscious of these things as well. How we're almost tailoring our parchad, because we see ourselves, if we put a katha on YouTube, 1 hour katha, it's only going to get like 1,000 views or 2,000 views. So we have to be very conscious about how we make our videos now. What is the first 5 seconds going to be like? in the video. And I know you've done a lot of research into this stuff as well. So how does that affect the type of Seva that you're doing now as well?
I think neuroscience plays a big factor into making all of these different platforms. And if you go on YouTube, which is another platform, and type in why you shouldn't watch social media, there's a lot of people. There was a recent whistleblower from Facebook who talked about how they know the Instagram and Facebook algorithm favors content which is toxic for children. Like they push anorexic content, and they actually have an influence on mental health of young people in terms of self-image, anxiety, depression, even suicide rates. So unfortunately, it's something that I think we have to live with, social media. My life was a lot better before social media came about, and I was a lot happier, a lot healthier, and there were a lot fewer distractions in terms of if you wanted to train, if you wanted to get smart at something, you had this whole chunk of day which social media didn't eat up. So personally, I think it can be used positively and leveraged like you guys at Basics are doing. And it's important to understand the neuroscience in terms of, you talked about retention and sometimes we're being manipulated, especially certain creators. They're creating content in a way which, changes from one image to another very quickly. It engages you, but it's dumbing us down in a sense, because we're just being led by whatever releases dopamine, more and more dopamine kind of pushes, and it desensitizes us to a point where we can't enjoy things that we should enjoy. So one research that I was looking into found that a like on Instagram creates the same amount of dopamine release as cocaine does, or similar amounts, just slightly less. So you think if you're in a place where you're posting things for likes, and I'm actually guilty of it myself, but if you're posting things for likes and you're looking for validation externally, then one, you're not living your life. You're holding up a camera to try and capture all these moments to make other people envious. And two, you're putting your mind in a state where it's not going to be able to enjoy things it should be able to enjoy because it's so high off social media. Like if it's comparative, in studies they're comparing it to cocaine, and we would never take cocaine, but we'd happily wake up first thing in the morning and consume social media, or last thing at night. And I'm guilty of this, so I'm not trying to say that I don't do this, so shame on anybody else. But I think it's important to have that awareness that you talked about earlier, where Guru Sahib said that person had awareness of his thoughts. So I think it's important for us to have awareness of the impact social media is having on us and how much we want to let it. So maybe we have the guidance is in terms of from behavioral scientists that we have some kind of boundaries around our use. So maybe we think, okay, from 12 p.m. to 8 p.m. I'll go on social media if I want to, but actually outside of those hours I'm gonna turn it off or uninstall it. I have to physically uninstall it to stop myself from habitually clicking on Instagram.
I do the same.
So unfortunately we live in a day and age where no one's going to protect us from this stuff and the effects it's going to have on our mind. It's going to be very hard to attach to Shabad if we're bombarding ourselves, and I'm speaking to myself here, with too much of this stuff, like these cocaine hits.
And you just mentioned a point about some of the more simpler things in life we cannot enjoy. Just for people to understand, what would be those simpler things then, if you have any examples, G?
Yeah, so for my age group, playing with your kids, spending time with a loved one. You'll have somebody going to dinner with their spouse, and they'll be on their phones on social media. So it's very difficult to nurture real human connection with somebody if your mind is addicted to social media. So things that should bring us joy, like family, faith, all of those things are not going to have the same impact they would. Like, it's going to be what you think. I was talking to Gurpreet Kaur about this. I was like, she was talking about how you get so much joy from going inwardly and doing abhyas and doing your meditation. And I was like, yeah, but that would take like 2 hours of sitting there trying to clear your mind. Whereas YouTube, I could just click UFC and just automatically get those dopamine hits from things that I want to watch. So, God's competing against Instagram and YouTube.
In one respect, yeah.
And Baji, just a question. I remember when we were in Canada together, you were talking about like a balanced lifestyle, and you were saying how it's so difficult because nowadays we have to do you have to take care of the kids, you have to have a balanced diet, have to go exercise, gym, all this stuff. You're also working, your Sikhi stuff. So how do you balance all this stuff?
I think that's a really good question. I think that's a question that a lot of people have, and I don't necessarily have the answer to that. I think every male, from my perspective, every dad will have his own way of how it works for him. My work is a bit flexible, so I can book patients when I want to see them. So it means that I can go to the gym at certain times and work it around that. I can pick the kids up from school. I can have certain time, which is, okay, this is quality time with the kids where we're just going to do arts and crafts or things like that. And not everyone has that flexibility depending on their role. They might be a solicitor where they're working crazy hours, that kind of stuff. But I think every couple probably just has to sit down and think, these are the amount of hours they are in the week. We need to sleep 8 hours. So outside of that, we got, time to eat, get dressed, all of that kind of stuff. And this is the 2 hours that they are, or 15. For some people, they have zero time. And I would say, don't feel guilty. Like, there were times when if I showered, it was like a good day, like we were so busy with the kids and they wouldn't even let us go to the toilet. They just start crying and start banging on the doors. So there are periods in life where you have these ebbs and flows of being super busy and then it calms down again. So I would say to men, first of all, if you've just had a newborn, just cut yourself some slack. Don't worry too much about falling behind on X, Y, and Z, because you'll pick it up when you get a bit more time. And then outside of that, if you do have a bit more time, then I would say you think, okay, you got to nurture your marriage. So you got to invest some time in that, whether it's a date night once a week or something, where you do some Gurbani Vichar together, or watch a film or whatever you want to do. And then you got to give your kids some time, because what's the point of you brought these kids into the world? They didn't ask to come here. So, well, technically, but so you have a responsibility to invest time into them. So you gotta like figure out how you're gonna fit that in. And then I don't think you can be a good dad if you're not looking after yourself. If you're not sleeping and you're not exercising, you're gonna, like, I'm talking about from personal experience, I'm very ratty. I'm a completely different person if I haven't slept or if I'm not training. And I can go for a run for half an hour and just be in a completely different space mentally and just be so much calmer and so much more tolerant. And I think that's really important. So you have to carve out time for yourself, look after yourself as a priority. And then you got to look at what are your priorities. So socializing, seeing your mates might not be that much of a priority when you look at all the other things. You might not have time for it. So that might be like once a month or once a fortnight, as opposed to every Friday night or that type of thing. So it comes back to time management. And the other thing it comes back to is those micro habits. So you might not be able to go to the gym, but maybe you can do like 10 press ups before you get in the shower. And that's a lot better than doing nothing. Yeah. So you just got to get those little wins wherever you can.
And that's another topic actually that we covers about procrastination as well. Because again, when it comes to having a balanced life, if you find a lot of time that we're wasting procrastinating, then that's just a lot of time gone, right? So do you have any advice on that? Because that was actually one of the questions that you asked on your Instagram poll that we did to ask the Sangat. So any advice when it comes to procrastination?
Yes, I think it comes back to the social media thing. I think the days when I haven't gone on my phone, I'm shocked at how many hours I have in the day to get stuff done and to get through big projects. And I think my mind has become very scattered and a bit like a rabbit in headlights, or shiny object syndrome, right? Where you see one shiny thing and you're meant to be writing a report and you see something else like a heater that needs to be fixed, and you start doing that, and then you realize you're out of bananas and you go to end up Sainsbury's, and then you realize it's nighttime and you haven't done anything that you're supposed to do. So
a day in the life.
Yeah, a day in the life of Harbir Singh. So if you just turn your phone off, great. Turn notifications off, definitely.
Yeah.
Get rid of all of those, and then just turn your phone off. Think this is like this one thing I do personally is I think, okay, what one thing can I do today that at the end of the day I'd feel like, okay, today was a successful day. So it might be like putting a video out or doing a podcast, or and you want to make it something attainable. And then you do that and you get that dopamine hit that actually I'm productive. You feel like a success. You feel like you're making progress towards your goals, and that can really snowball into you being more and more productive. But I think TV and social media are a big time sap. I think personally, I'll go on YouTube, and then before I know it, like an hour's gone, 2 hours gone.
And I think also to add to that, it's sometimes more emotional response, procrastination, rather than just a time management thing. Sometimes people would get overwhelmed or something, and that would cause them just to not start the thing at all. They're like, oh, it's too much. I'll just leave it for later, So it's also learning how to deal with those emotions as well, and understanding that no, it is possible, and you can use loads of things. I remember you did videos about like affirmations, about visualization, all of these things. So yeah.
There's lots of tools out there, and I recommend all of them. Anything that works for you. It's a bit like fitness. You've got to play around with things, see what works best for you. I've tried like Pomodoro timers, which are like 20-minute timers, and you set a certain amount of work that you need to get in 20 minutes, then you have a 5-minute break where you just walk around, stretch. That method has helped. I've set just timers on my watch. So I'll think, okay, I need to get ready, do everything within 10 minutes, or I need to get all the dishes done within 10 minutes. And looking at a huge pile of dishes, which is going to take me hours, I might put that off. But when I think, okay, I've only got to do 10 minutes, get myself started. I use that for work as well, for report writing, that type of stuff, writing patient notes. Exercise is productive. I'm reading actually a book at the moment on meditation, and the guy who is a productivity expert, he tried lots of different things, and then at one point he said the thing that worked best for him was 35 hours of meditation a week. Wow. So he took out 35 hours to do meditation in a week, and he goes, the amount of focus that produces in the mind, he was more productive than he's ever been from doing everything else, reading books, all the other kinds of things he was doing. So yeah, if you can do Simran, like Basavi, go Park Avenue, Amritwala in the mornings, if you get to do Sangat, like that kind of really sets you up. I Guru Kripa at the moment started a new habit of dropping the kids off and then going to Gurdwara and Matha taking, and just getting Guru Sahib's darshan first thing in the morning. I find I have a better day than not. So just any little things that you can find. But there is in terms of that dopamine, if you think of a crack addict, he's always looking for his next fix. So if you put yourself in an environment where it's going to be very easy for you to just end up binge watching or going on social media, then you're probably going to fall into that, because as you fatigue, as you feel certain emotions, you're more likely to seek that reward and that whole dopamine release. So if you can set yourself up with a good environment, like you're doing a work session together, you know you're not going to just sit and watch Netflix for that whole period of time. So that's also creating an environment where you can get the best out of yourself is really important.
And just another question that leads on to that, especially now with the new year coming up, and a lot of people generally they use that as a time to set new goals as well. So do you have any advice on that? Any tips for motivation? Obviously, you don't want to just wait once a year and then go like a few days. I know you said earlier about achievable goals as well. But anything that you think would help just motivate the listeners, whatever they're looking to do in their life, or whether that's get out of a difficult situation or just grow in something else. Any advice when it comes to motivation?
So one thing I would say is slightly unrelated, is be yourself. So for me to say to Baji, you should start rock climbing, right? Where he has no interest in rock climbing. And, that because I've brainwashed him, that becomes one of his goals, that he's going to become a Olympic rock climber. Then it's kind of pointless. So I think firstly, just think about what you want. Because like reading books, I read a lot of books because it means I don't watch TV. So I find it is a better habit for me. But that might not necessarily work for everyone's lifestyle. So just don't worry about what someone else is doing. Don't look on Instagram and think, oh yeah, that guy's exercising for 2 hours a day, I should be doing that, because it might not be feasible based on your priorities and your goal in life. So first, figure out what you want in life. And then the next thing I would say is I've been very goal orientated and been able to achieve a lot of goals, but I think it's very important to be balanced. So you need to set goals in your health, you need to set goals in your family life, and you need to set goals in your work. You need to set goals in your spirituality, in your bhakti. If you just get too one-sided, like I was, and you're just focusing on work, then you'll achieve all your work goals, but you'll still feel empty. So and you won't have spent any time with your family, and you'll think, well, what's all this for anyway? So it's very important to try and look holistically at the things you want, not just think, okay, I want this Lamborghini because this guy on YouTube has a Lamborghini and he did this, so I want to do this. But just think, actually, well, what do I want out of life? Do you want a successful marriage? Well, that requires time and investment. Do you want your kids to grow up and think, yeah, my dad was there for me? Then that requires consistent time and investment. So if you start off from a place like that, and then the second part is what you said exactly, which is you want to make them achievable. So really easy. And if you get them done in the first month, that's brilliant. And then it builds self-efficacy. You think, I can do this, God's grace. Look how far I've come. I wasn't doing this thing before. Now I am. So maybe it's possible for me. Whereas, if I say I want 1 million subscribers by tomorrow, it just creates it's unrealistic expectation, sets me up for failure. And then I think, well, maybe it's not possible for me. I never post ever again. So it's very important to set yourself up for success.
Thank you for that. I think that helped a lot of Sangat out as well.
And I think accountability as well is an important thing. So if I say to Baji, Baji, I'm going to run a marathon by June, right? And he's going to be like, oh, I'm going to say, make sure you hold me accountable. And then I don't want to feel like, oh yeah, I've just been blagging. So as long as it's attainable, as long as it's reasonable, it's actually something I want. I think accountability can be really helpful.
And just another question actually came from the Sangat as well, from your Instagram page. Helping keep my parents fit and healthy. Advice on exercises they can actually do. Do you have any advice on that as well?
Hanji. So I had 2 guests recently on my podcast. One of them, Dr Harbir Singh, shout out to him from Edinburgh. He actually had a heart attack and he started making some lifestyle changes. He wasn't unhealthy in the first place. He was already vegetarian and exercised anyway. But he started walking. I think he's doing 15,000 steps a day on average. And he's lost, I think, 2 stones. So just little things like that. Walking. I worked with Fajr Singh, which he's part of Sikhs in the city running team in East London. And he doesn't run most of the time. He walks. So walking is a phenomenal exercise. It's something I would highly recommend. And for the elderly population, regardless of whether you're my age or depending on how old that person was who sent that message in, might have been my son. But yeah, depending on where you're at, you can scale it. So you've just got to find something that fits for the person's lifestyle. Same going back to the old example. If I said to Baji, do rock climbing, he has no interest in doing rock climbing. Although I have seen him rock climb in Vancouver. He's actually really good at it.
Was he?
Not amazing.
But you have to have a passion for that. So my friends, the ones that I grew up with, they do Thai boxing. So when I go and do Thai boxing with them, it's a social thing for me. I get to see my friends. It's a bit of soul food. And so I'm more likely to stick to that. So when you look at exercise, ideally, you want to feel part, a human need is to feel part of a community, to feel belonging. And if you can find that from Sikhi, that's amazing. If you can find it from an exercise group as well, that's going to help you stay exercising for longer. So if you have your things that you go to the gym with, you don't want to let them down and you'll get inspired by them. So that's a much more conducive relationship to being healthy long term.
Hanji.
And just to add to that, on the topic of the community, I remember listening to this talk by the psychologist in America, and they said that they had loads of patients which were coming and saying we've got like anxiety, depression, all these mental problems. And they had this idea that what if we make a garden and we tell them every week to come and just start tending to the garden. And what they said is really nice. They said as the garden was flourishing, so was that community. So was their minds flourishing. Because if one person missed a week, everyone would phone them and be like, hey, what's up? What's going on? So they built that support network. And then he said that nearly all of them, whatever mental problems they had, it went away just from having that safe space and building that garden together.
Anji, that's amazing. I think there's so many ways looking at different factors with that. One is probably the biggest aspect is the community. Other is being outside, green spaces have an effect on mental health.
Yep.
You're being productive. You're seeing things grow, a sense of achievement and sense of fulfillment from that. So yeah, any way you can get your sense of belonging that's positive. So not with bad sangat, but with good sangat. And you can and with elderly population, there's loads of aunties groups that go to Southall Park in the mornings and walk around there. So if you can find an auntie who'll be willing to, this is to Darshan Kaur, if you can find an auntie who'll be willing to go for a walk with you in the mornings, then you can go and do that. Or it might be any other type of form of exercise that you can. Gardening is another form. Anything that you can really connect with, that you enjoy, and that you can do as a community.
Baji, just a quick question on diet, because I know you're a big advocate for like intermittent fasting and stuff. So what are the benefits of doing that?
Yeah, so diet is a really polarizing topic. I was thinking about this on the way in because, obviously outside of the Sikh community, some people are like, oh, you have to eat meat. I was talking to Bhai Singh about this in the morning, that you can't be strong unless you eat meat, or you need to do this, or, all that kind of stuff. Or even when I got into Sikhi, my gran, who's, typical Punjabi grind, she was like, "Oh, tu takrag nahi hona hai, tu meat ka te sharta," and stuff. So there is that misconception, that stigma. But the strongest people I know are vegetarians. And I was talking, one of my friends, and a patient, Bao, he's heavyweight national champion in freestyle wrestling, and he's never had meat in his life. So it's definitely possible. And in terms of diet, the reason I was an advocate of intermittent fasting was, one, because I tried lots of things and that was the thing that worked for me. And two, it doesn't cost anything, doesn't require any preparation, or you don't have to buy any specific books or subscribe to anything. So I really advocate for that, because as a busy dad, I don't have time to do food prep. I don't have time to measure calories of every meal that I'm eating. But I can wait till 12 to eat. That was pretty simple and sustainable. So that's the first thing, is you got to just forget about what other people say when you're looking at diet. You've got to just try things out for yourself and see what works for you. Second thing is it needs to be sustainable, because a pro bodybuilder once said to me, I said to him, "What's the best diet?" And he said, "The one that you can stick to." So there's no point you following this meal plan that you're going to do for 3 months, and then you're going to go back to eating like, pizza on every Friday and, an entire pizza, because you're going to go back to exactly the same place. So you want to make changes that you can sustain. And it might start with just changing your breakfast, just going from Cocoa Pops to porridge with some blueberries and some peanut butter, for example. So once you changed breakfast and you start feeling a lot better, you start feeling your energy levels are a lot more balanced throughout the day, and mentally you feel better, then you can look at, okay, how do I clean up my lunch? How do I get a bit more greens in? How do I get a bit more water in my diet, in a way that you can maintain till you're 100? Because otherwise, what's the point if you're only going to do it for a month?
So make lifestyle changes, basically.
Lifestyle changes and doing things in a way which is setting yourself up for success. If I say every Sunday I'm going to do meal prep for the next 7 days for the family, and it's going to take me 6 hours, that's probably not something I'm going to be able to maintain. But if I say, okay, this is what I was doing, an example, every lunch I'll go to Sainsbury's, the local one, get some brown rolls and hummus and spinach, and just eat that for lunch while I'm at the hospital. That was really easy to do. It didn't require any preparation, and it was cheap. So
tasty?
I think it was tasty, but when you're hungry, anything's tasty, right?
True,
even spinach, if you're really hungry. So that got me really good results. So, and it's easy to maintain. So you have to think about it from that perspective. But the other problem, I think, is that we're too used to like swads now.
Yeah.
Like
100%.
it's like, oh yeah, I feel like this today, I feel like that today. Whereas going back again when I was younger, you had dal roti every day. You had roti at home. There was no let's go out and eat.
Son, I gotta be say that. Let's go on.
I do the same now, but I think we have to be aware that when you go to a restaurant, they're not looking at the best ingredients. How can we make this person the healthiest possible? They're looking at how can we get this person to eat the most and come back here, because they think it's really swad. So, and that's not going to be looking at numbers, calories, sugar content, salt content. So it's hazardous if we do it on a too regular basis. My mum in India, she said that when she was a kid, she used to do kheti bari. She used to carry like heavy loads on her head before she went to school every day. Then she used to cycle to school, and she said, she said when they would get barfi on a special occasion like Diwali or something, Bandi Shod Divas, they would split it between the kids, like one barfi.
No way.
The 3 kids would split it in between themselves.
Yeah.
So that was like their excess, was that they
now you split the dabba, innit?
Yeah, now you're like, yeah, I need to finish this dabba before it goes off. So, that excess, and in Gurbani it says raskas khaye pind vadai, like we're so used to swads that it's not conducive to even Sikhi, but also just health. We're going to get problems.
Just going a bit off topic, Baji, I really admire the fact that you've like made this lifestyle for yourself where you're like got flexible work and stuff, and you've made your own business. So what tips would you give for someone, because we've been to a few like business conferences together, right?
Anji.
On like people who are trying to get into that self-employed lifestyle.
Anji. I think firstly, I'm talking about myself here. I set a goal that I want to earn $1 million, right? And that wasn't really my goal. It was just things that I was hearing from all these business people. that you got to be a millionaire. But what does that even mean? Like you have $1 million in your bank, but how is that going to change your life in any way? So they've done lots of research on lottery winners, and they found that actually a number of them have regretted it. They've said it's the worst thing that's ever happened to them.
Yeah.
And you can go and there's books on this stuff. But I think firstly, it's important to have a number in your head that to maintain the lifestyle that I want, I need to earn this much. So it might be, 2,000, 3,000 a month. And then depending on what you've studied, like Baji studied computer science, and you can look at, what fields give me some type of flexibility, some kind of work from home arrangement where I can get my work done in my own time, still be able to help out with the newborns and that kind of stuff. And then you can work back from there. So I think it's important to reverse engineer the process. So for me, fortunately, I've studied as an osteopath. It's a lucrative profession, and I can think, I need to earn this much. And then, that's this many patients a week. So as long as I'm hitting that many patients a week, the rest of the time I can just take off and spend with the family. But just having an arbitrary goal like 1 million, it makes no sense. It wasn't right for me. So I would say just figure out what you really want, and then you can do that. And the harder I've worked, the more anxiety, the more I think Puff Daddy says the more money, more problems. But I think he must have read some spiritual book on some faith or something, because it is true in my experience. So you want to have enough to be able to live the lifestyle you want and be comfortable. But in excess of that, it just gives you more stress.
I think even Jordan Peterson, he said that over like a certain threshold of like $90,000 in the US, you're not benefiting your life. You can live a comfortable life and still have all the like necessities as well. So anything above that, you're just like causing extra anxiety or stress.
And you want to be time rich as well, right? Like rich is a concept which is, I think, needs to be reinvented. Because when we think about, I say to Bhagat, that guy's really rich, that's why he's got that car. But actually, he's not really rich. He's got a lot of money. But it doesn't mean he's rich. You know, maybe he might not have the best relationship with his kids. He might do. It's just an assumption. But he might not feel content. He might not feel happy. He might not have peace of mind. He might not have a guru. So there's lots of ways that you can measure richness. So I think you've just got to find the right one for you, and then work towards that.
That's cool. Anything that you want to cover?
I think there was a question about the chonkra that I often get asked a lot, especially from guys who aren't used to going to the Gurdwara, and then they need to go to a camp or they need to get married and they have to sit on camera in chonkra. So I think you guys
on camera in chonkra. I've heard that one before.
So I think you guys have a lot more experience about that. So I appreciate your input. But for me, someone said this to me a long time ago, it's just practice. He goes, if you had to sit through a film in a chonkra, you'd probably do it because your mind is so immersed in the film, you're not going to feel it. So over time, you just get used to it. And first I used to think, chonkra is not really suited for bigger guys, because if you look at the old photos of sadhus, they're usually quite emaciated and they'll sit all day. But I've seen some, Singhs sit for long periods of time. One of my friends, Jai from Kov, he sits for longer than I do, and so he trains, and muscular guy. So I think it's more to do with practice and the amount of time you've spent in chonkra. It just gets easier. Your ligaments stretch, your body molds to that movement. But I would say, as with anything, build it up gradually, because otherwise you'll get in pain.
Baji, what can you do for, like, say you've been sitting for a long time and you get like stiffness in your joints and knees? So what can you do to combat that?
So one common problem is pins and needles, and for that it's blood flow. So anything that helps with blood flow, like exercise, massage, stretching, changing position, so just moving the foot out so your artery here doesn't get compressed by your knee, that type of stuff can help. On the other hand, in terms of with stiffness in joints, then again, similar stuff. So anything that's going to improve blood flow is going to improve mobility as well. So stretches like yoga, that kind of stuff, just stretching like before and after sitting for long periods of time as well. And also like cardiovascular exercise, running, swimming, rowing, something that's going to improve blood flow to the joints is going to help. Nutrition wise, weight loss, all those kind of things help if you're overweight, obviously not for everyone.
That's the worst thing when your legs go to sleep, especially a few times I've been doing talks on stage and it's been like a big stage and like this next Jatha's coming and then you're about to get up and like, I can't get out. It's like, you don't know what to do. So you just like drag yourself back so you get out of the way.
Yeah, I
It's
feel for
proper awkward.
Katawachiks and like double players as well, because
Yeah.
they sometimes sit for the whole program, right? So
Yeah.
I feel like those guys.
Yeah, but it doesn't happen a lot now. But all times, like, how did this happen to me? This one random time, you
Hanji.
sat down and you just let go to sleep.
I was listening to the audiobook of Bandagi Nama. It's on SoundCloud. And he was talking about, and this is going back obviously quite a few years ago, he used to sitting on a wedge, so sitting on a cushion. So your sitting bones are on the cushion, but your legs are off, because that reduces pressure off the knees, but also the back. And so I was surprised, because I know Buddhists sit like that. I've been to mindfulness courses, but that's the first person in the community who I've heard recommend that as a method of sitting. Because if you're in pain, it's going to be very hard for you to concentrate. So if you're doing a bias at home, I would recommend just sitting with your legs outstretched and sitting like on the sofa comfortably or something. Because your mind is the thing that's got to try and focus, right? Like if you're in pain, you're thinking, oh, I really want to move, then you're not going to be able to concentrate.
Definitely, and that helps me a lot as well. I'll just put like a gumball underneath me.
That's perfect.
And just like, but my legs are lower, but my like the top of my body's higher,
Hanji.
and then it just takes the pressure off your legs.
Hanji.
And then you like you said, with time you can sit for longer.
Hanji.
Like I was saying to Khivi Singh the other day, that now I can sit for 2 hours comfortably. For 3 hours, then I know my knees are gonna ache when I stand up like like how my Baba used to stand up, like very slowly, the pains in the knees. But yeah, just with time, it literally just gets easier. That stuff. One thing I just want to talk about before we finish off. First of all, I enjoyed this podcast so much. It's very nice. So thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.
And a lot of great topics we covered. And I get a bit excited sometimes because I think about all the cool things that will hopefully Guru Kirpa Karan that we could do in the future. And just to those that are listening as well, if you have any ideas of topics that you'd like to see Bhai Sahib cover in the future, coming on the podcast, even doing some sort of like series stuff. I know I'm chucking things out there, whether we do or not, that's up to Guru Sahib Ji, but like, because what's great is that you have a lot of experience in different things, whether that's the health side, the diet side, but just let us know what you'd want us to cover in the future. If you want us to cover a certain topic or topics and break it up, that'd be something that we could do in the future as well. Do you have anything in mind that you would like to do?
I just want to take this opportunity to thank you guys, really, to be honest, for having me here. I feel really blessed that I've listened to the other podcasts, and the people that you've had on are just so amazing. So I feel really out of place. But firstly, just thank you. Secondly, just in any capacity that I can help is a blessing, because I think what Jagraj created and what you guys have done and maintained is commendable. I think it's a really beautiful thing that you're doing. And I can see a little bit of the behind the scenes of how much work that you guys put in. So it's amazing. And lastly, I just want to say that this is just my experience that I've talked about. So lots of people with diet and exercise, they will have different experiences, and with Sikhi. So and so if I've said anything wrong or said anything to offend anybody, I honestly, that was not the intention. So I hope people can take it with a pinch of salt.
Disclaimer that this is
disclaimer. You don't want like.
I think we said the same with Darshan Kaur. Same thing. Disclaimer.
Yeah, disclaimer. But in terms of engaging with the community online, I think like exercise, I think things that trend well in terms of SEO, we could look at from a health and fitness point of view. Commonly asked topics like diet, we could do a series on like recipes, for example, because apne they need to eat roti and dal and sabji, because that's our diet. So if you're gonna put like a person like me on salad and lean protein, it's not sustainable. It's not gonna work, and it probably wouldn't suit my gut. So we could do a series on diet. We could do, which is probably more commonly asked about than exercise. But exercise is another area that you can work on, because you've got lots of people doing different types of things, bodybuilding type workouts, and people doing body weight stuff, and people doing martial arts, and it needs to be well rounded for people not to pick up injuries and that type of stuff. So I think we could look at what have Singhs historically done, and then look at how do we create like a syllabus. So when I was Thai boxing, if you wanted to fight, you had to run 5 miles a day. You had to do 5 rounds of pads for 3 minutes. You had to do this many rounds of sparring. You had to be able to do this many press ups. So I think if we had something around, actually, this is something to work towards, then that would be great. Also, even you could gamify it. So in the army, they have a ranking system. So they'll test your 1 mile run. They'll test your pull-ups. and then they'll do that every 6 months and say, okay, which one of the basic Sangat is the fittest person in the rankings? And then you retest 6 months. So you've got that motivation to think, well, I don't want to be the 550th person. This time I want to be a little bit better.
149.
Yeah, 100, yeah, absolutely. It's a bit like me with the quiz. And so when you're aware of something, with anything, with diet, with exercise, when you have awareness around something, you perform better. And when you build in that community aspect, so there's lots of ways that we can gamify health and fitness to improve the health and well-being of the community.
And you talked about ingredients and stuff. Are you going to start cooking for us then? Is that what you're trying to say?
I'm actually cooking at home at the moment. So yeah, I've actually tried to. So you're welcome to come round and try it. And if it's any good, then we can make a video.
Take it forward.
Yeah.
Good
Taste test first.
Very good. That's fine. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. And again, please forget any mistakes that have been made. And hopefully we could do this again sometime soon. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.